what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Harry from Whipped Cream Sounds again, and in today's video we're going over how 53 Thieves do their bass and their drums. Now this is a follow-up video from a previous video I did of a dissection of 53 Thieves track What You Do To Me, and a couple of you guys asked me how I made the bass and how I did the drums as well. So in this video we're going to be doing the bass and the drums. Now if we have a listen to the drums and bass on their own, it sounds kind of like it wouldn't fit, but it does. What I mean by that is the bass is not really as acoustic as you think it would be. At first I did try to go with an acoustic bass, but I ended up going with one of the presets from my pack in the lo-fi pack, which we're going to go over later. But it doesn't sound too acoustic, but then when you link it with the chords, it sounds wicked. So let's start off with the sub oscillator. For the sub oscillator, I went down -3 semitones because it's a sub bass. We want it to be really low. Then on top of that, we put a noise on this, and this is the SH1 noise from the analog pack. I pitched that down to 41%, and then I also did some envelope stuff, which we'll go over later. Then for the next oscillator, I chose analog BD sine, which you can find in the analog wavetables in Serum. Took this down to -2 semitones, added a unison of 3 to give it a stereo effect and give it a bit of width. Took that detune back slightly, and I don't think I did anything else to that. No, I didn't. Then we got this guitar waveform, which is actually a waveform from a guitar that I've sampled, and it comes in the lo-fi pack as part of like a noise oscillator pack. So in the pack you'll get the bass, the drums, the effects, the melodies, and the Serum presets, and the presets come with the noise oscillator stuff, which is Serum organic instruments, and it's just a bunch of stuff that I've sampled and I used in those particular patches on the noise oscillators or as a waveform. But I took that from the noise oscillator pack and then I dragged and dropped that into the Serum VST. Then I put it down -2 semitones, put the unison up to 3 as well, and then I took the detune back just there. And I've also chosen the FM from sub oscillator on this thing in the middle, and I've just put that up slightly to give it a little bit of extra crunch. Then the next thing I did was the filter, and I forgot to turn that off, so I'm sorry if you have been testing the sound against this sound. The filter is on, so everything we've done so far you've got right. It was me that ruined it. That's what it sounds without the filter. It's a pretty similar sound anyway. And then with the filter, we've got an MG low 12 on, and we're just turning on A, B, N, and S. We're putting the cutoff back to the middle, and we're putting the resonance just like a tad up. Then the next thing we got is the envelope, and for the envelope it's literally just envelope 1. We put the attack up to 9.7 milliseconds, we took the decay to 391 milliseconds, and we took the release to 87 milliseconds. You also want to take this sustain back a little bit, so we got that curve going down like that, and I took that back to -10.7 decibels. I also applied this envelope to the noise oscillator here, which is the SH1 noise, and that is literally just putting the level of that noise up every single time that the envelope hits. And what this is doing is it's just giving us a slight little tease of noise in the background to add texture and not overloading the sound with noise. Then for the effects, we use some distortion, compression, and EQ. If we play it without, sounds kind of thin, so I added some distortion, which was tube distortion, just to give a bit of extra grit to it. All I did was put the drive up to 37%, and then I took the mix to around 18%. Then for the compressor, we're compressing at a threshold of minus 33.5 decibels. We're putting the ratio up high, 8:1, because we really want to squash this sound. And we're taking the attack to 141.3 milliseconds and the release to 118.2 milliseconds. I just accidentally changed it by a millisecond there. Now the attack's quite quick because it's quite a quick sound, but we don't want to siphon off the transient. We want the transient to come through and then for it to compress. And then for the release settings, we're also doing the same thing. We want it to recover before it hits on the next bass note. Then on the end of that, we just added some gain just to make up the gain that we lost. I think I added more because it sounds kind of louder. Then the last thing was the EQ, and for the EQ we just shelved the EQ from 212 Hertz using that little icon there just to push it up. This gives us extra sub information and extra low end information from the bass, which is what we want. I pushed the Q up a little bit to 60% as well, and then I also took the gain to 6.5 decibels. Then for the second EQ curve, we're using this little bell filter icon and we're just kind of boosting, I think it was something from this FM here. It sounded quite cool. So I was like scanning through the spectrum, listening for stuff, and whatever there is at 2779 Hertz sounds cool. So we put this little bell filter on, we took the Q back so it's like a 10. And then we're putting up the gain 5.5 decibels and we end up with a sound that sounds something like this. Then on the end of this sound, we're not actually using any processing at all apart from the sidechain compression. The sidechain compressor, we literally just press this little arrow thing. We hit the sidechain, we hit kick design because that's our kick. And then I put the ratio to infinite to 1, so it's gonna duck out the way as much as possible. We want it to squash the bass as much as possible. And then the attack and release were really, really short. We're gonna go over the first thing I did, which was the kick, and I actually designed the kick myself in Operator because I couldn't really find a kick that I wanted in any of the packs that I was using. Nothing just really fit. So in Operator, you can do this really cool thing and you can actually fix the frequency. So you can fix the frequency to whatever you want and that sine wave will always play at that frequency. So as you can hear, that's always playing at a fundamental frequency of 55 Hertz. And I wanted that because usually kicks kind of have that region of like between 40 and 50 Hertz where they have that rumble of the sine wave. It kind of kicks through. You'll know what I mean. If you take a look at a kick, you'll always see like the low end is much higher than the high end. Then on the attack and the decay, I put 0 milliseconds on the attack and the decay at 1.06 milliseconds. Now that's pretty long and I'm going to go over the reason why, because if you look at these MIDI notes here, I have a few that are slightly longer and it kind of adds a bit to the groove. That longer one, it sounds like a small thing, but it is one of those small things that just adds to the groove of that beat so much more. Then we got oscillator B, which is another sine wave, just kind of adding a bit more texture. So I just took another sine wave and I put the coarse pitch to 2 and then I put the level to -21 just to mix it with the current stuff I had. And then I took the attack to 0 milliseconds, the decay to 810 because I didn't want this rumbling on too long because it's really low frequency and it would kind of interact with the bass of it too much. That's it for that sine wave. Then we added a noise loop over here, and there's a difference between noise white and noise looped. I can't remember exactly what it is, but one of them doesn't pitch or something like that. But either way, I used noise loop. As you can hear, it's adding that click to the top of the kick, so we have that extra knock to it. And if we play everything together, we get this kick that sounds like this. Now that's all the oscillators together. You're probably thinking that doesn't sound like a kick yet, Harry. What else did you do? And it was the pitch envelope here. I didn't have that turned on when I just played it to you. Now for the pitch envelope, this is creating most of the sound. As you can hear, when I turn that on and off, it's really giving that extra kick to the kick. So for the pitch envelope, I put this up 100%. I transposed everything down -24. And then on the envelope section of this pitch envelope, I took the attack to 0 milliseconds, the decay to 600 milliseconds. And then here's the important stuff right here. I'm taking the initial semitone to +48. So initially it's hitting in the high register and creating that click. And then it's going down to -12 semitones, which allows the rumble. Then on top of that, I chose this setting on operator. I'm not really sure how you describe that. It's just this thing. I took the time to -23 just to kind of reduce the attack a little bit. Not the attack, the release a little bit. And then I also took the tone up to 67% and I just kept the volume at 0 decibel. Then for the settings on this kick, as you can see, I've got an EQ8 on it and I've also got a glue compressor. I didn't actually end up leaving this FabFilter Pro Q3 on, so we're not going to go over that. There is something cool that I want to show you that I used from it to try and get this EQ curve. This is a little side note, but if you go down to this EQ match thing here, you can actually play a reference track in and you can match the EQ from that reference track. So in this instance, I took that very small segment, cut it up slightly from the 53 Thieves track of the kick, and I played it through so it would match the EQ. That's kind of how you can get an idea for how they've EQ'd things, and it gives you a visual representation of what that sound looks like. On the EQ on this, we literally just scooped out some of the lows from 26 hertz onwards, and then we also took out about 2 decibels, 3 decibels of 2.25 kilohertz just there. On the glue compression front, we compressed it with a 10:1 ratio, an attack of 3, and then a release of 0.4. Now the attack of 3 is an attack of 3 because I didn't want it to squash the transient of the kick. You don't want it to squash the kick of the kick because you want the kick of the kick. Then the release is the exact same thing. We need the compression to recover before it hits the next kick, so we want a quick release. Then I'm just using a threshold of -9.84 decibels and a makeup of 3.65 decibels, as well as the soft clip over here. Now the soft clip is a very important feature because the soft clip makes it sound more analog. I then took that kick, froze it, put it over here, and then I put -1 on the transpose just to transpose it down a bit to fit the vibe of the rest of the drums. Then on the end of this kick, I also put an EQ8, which is where I'm just literally taking out the lows on this end. I'm not even really sure why I didn't use a low pass filter. I just yeah. I then also boosted at around 225 hertz with a 3.35 decibel increase just to give a bit of extra like oomph to the kick. And we're also taking out the highs here, and then we're boosting at around 6.67 kilohertz just to give that click a little bit of extra stuff. I think I just spat on my keyboard. Nice. Then the glue compression again is literally just on here for the soft clipping. That's all I did. I didn't even bother with any compression settings. I just put the makeup up and put the soft clip on, and you get a kick that smacks. Now for the snare, I used this Vengeance Deep House clap. And as you can see from this, I added some fades on the one before and then left the one afterwards without any fades, and I just basically continued that pattern. As you can see, we got like a fade and then a not fade, a fade and then a not fade. And that was just to give that track that bouncy feel, because as you can hear on every other beat, we've got this. So I layered those two together, and I used the section here of this particular snare to layer with the clap and make it sound more like snare-like. As you can hear, the full snare has that kind of like white noise thing on the end of it. But by shortening that and then fading it out, we have something that sounds like that. Then if we layer it with that clap, we got a really nice snare sound. And as you can hear, that layer comes down into these samplers down here, and I've used this sampler and I've resampled this snare from up here, and we get something that ends up like this. Then on this snare, I did a little bit of EQ. As you can see, I've taken out the lows here around 122 hertz, just scooped out. Then we're putting the 359 hertz, just boosting it a little bit because that's where the snare kind of cracks. As you can see, here, it kind of cracks around there, so you just want to bring that out more. Then at around 4.7 kilohertz, just to boost those highs a little bit. Then we've also got some glue compression on it, just compressing those snares together as a group and making them sound more congruent. Also some soft clip to add that warm analog feel as well. Then we also put some frequency shifter on here at -40 just to tune the snare. Then the next main element of this is the hats. Now, as you can hear, this is our super swung beat, so I used the super swung MIDI. What I used here was sounds from my lo-fi pack. You can go grab these from the lo-fi pack in the description down below, and I just used a closed hat and an open hat. And then the open hat. And as you can see there, I'm taking out the lows just to remove the low end so it doesn't interfere with anything else. And then we're also boosting around 4.9 kilohertz just to give it some sizzle. Then on this open hat, we scooped out the lows up to 742 hertz, and then we took out the highs to 6.67 kilohertz. Then on top of those hats, I used a little shaker loop. And as you can hear, that's really swung. To add that swing in, I had to warp this and just change the warp points to the points where it sounded good. And this was literally just a lot of trial and error, just moving these different points around. And when you're doing this, you kind of want to use complex mode as well, because if you click beats mode, it'll just create like extra transients. Then to make that even more groovy, I added an auto pan, just going left to right at a half rate, just to create the panning effect. Just tickling the ears. Then we got an EQ8, just scooping out all those lows and taking out some highs and then boosting that just for a little bit of sizzle. Then all together, the drums sound something like this. And that's pretty much the sound. Those are the drums, that's the bass. But I do have a little bonus tip for you for reaching the end of this video. If you do want some cool free stuff, you can go over to the website, and we got tons of free downloads over there, including a free version of the sample pack, which I'm pretty sure includes this bass. It also includes those open hi-hats and hi-hats that I used in this drum pattern, and it includes a load of cool other stuff like melodies, Serum presets, noise oscillator samples, tons of cool stuff. So if you want to go grab that, in the description below there's a link where you can download the free one, and then if you like the free one, you can go buy the full version, which is only 17 quid. There's also tons of cool tutorials for free over on the website, written, that you can go over at your own pace if you like that. And there's also tons of tutorials on this YouTube channel, including one that is a precursor to this one that does the chord design in this track. So if you watch those two together, you'll have the bass, the chords, and the drums, and then you'll sound exactly like 53 Thieves, my friend. But that's not what we're gonna do. Create your own sound from those sounds. Thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you did, please leave a like and please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel and yeah, all that cool stuff. See you in a bit. Bye bye.